This week, my Lenten challenge was to give up comparisons. And I couldn't do it. Turns out I compare everyone and everything all of the time. It happens in the grocery store when I have to decide which apples to purchase. It happens when I'm trying to choose what to do in the next 10 minutes or the next 10 days. It happens when I'm looking at Facebook and seeing what others are sharing about their day. It happens at work. It happens with family. It happens when I'm trying to work for justice in the world. And comparison can be a very useful tool. It's what wine tastings or the Pepsi challenge were all about. It helps you figure out what you like best, this or that. What's the best choice for you? It can be helpful in difficult decisions. If I think about what a mentor might do or what Jesus might do. It can be helpful when we want to treat people with equity and fairness. It's sometimes why we grade on a curve. It can also help us expand our understandings when we can walk a mile in someone else's shoes. But it was Theodore Roosevelt who first said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And this week, I've been thinking about how and when that is so. I think it happens pretty easily when we look at other people's lives and compare our accomplishments or our lifestyle, our working conditions or our abilities, our relationships or our stuff. There can be this tendency to think that the grass is always just a little bit greener. How come they can go on a vacation and I can't? How come they have a new car and I don't? How come things always come so easy for them and not for me? How come their family is so together and ours seems to be falling apart? How come they can fall asleep so easily and I'm awake at 3 a.m? How come? Well, there are actually countless answers to those questions. But when we ask in that way, we don't really want the answers, do we? We are assuming all kinds of things about the other, and we don't really want to answer those real questions about ourselves. We're not alone in this tendency. In ancient days, Moses gave his people some basic laws to follow. And one of them was, do not covet. Don't be jealous. Well, I'd say it slightly differently, because it's pretty normal to feel jealous sometimes. But the point was not to act out of jealousy, not to allow jealousy to have power over your life, not to let jealousy be the lens through which you viewed the world. Because jealousy gives you a false picture, doesn't it? It often assumes that we deserve more and they deserve less. It sees only parts of life and parts of someone else's life, rather than that full picture that we know includes joy and pain, success and failure, peak and valley, flaw and beauty. So then how do we make sure that jealousy is not the lens through which we view the world? Well, I think first we pay attention to how and how much we compare our lives. That is what I've been trying to do a little of this week. If you're feeling jealous, why is that? Is your jealousy a sign of insecurity or worry? What's going on there? One of the most helpful things I have discovered about jealousy is that a way to reduce its power over you is to speak honestly about it, to say it out loud. Because when it comes out of your mouth, somehow it suddenly becomes less powerful, when it's no longer swirling around in your brain and your heart. It gives you a sense of perspective somehow. So this week, one of the comparisons I did without even thinking, that happened a lot, was when I saw online that a friend had gone to a concert in Winnipeg. Immediately I thought, jealous! It was a concert with music I would have enjoyed, and I didn't know it was even happening, so I was a little disappointed that I didn't have the opportunity to go. Never mind all of the reasons why I might not have chosen to go if I had known about it. Never mind that. Jealous. But when I admitted out loud that I was jealous, it was easy for me to tell that I wasn't unhappy for my friend. I was glad she'd had the opportunity to go, and that jealousy left as quickly as it had come. Even so, I noticed that my envy made me poorer. I wasn't able to be immediately happy for my friend's opportunity. And I withheld my joy for her as I focused on my disappointment. And isn't that too bad? It's one of the poisons of jealousy. It makes us stingy with our goodwill and our money and our stuff, because want always breeds want. And it holds back and holds on in every way. Because we somehow, in our jealous mind, think that another person's good fortune leaves less in the world for us. Our tendency when we compare ourselves to one another is to find ourselves lacking. And we feel badly about ourselves, and so we hold back from trying things because we can't possibly measure up to those who have the good fortune of being so talented. And so we even become stingy with our own wisdom and our participation. We can hold back and let others decide things for us. See, we can blame them then later when, yet again, we don't get what we want. It is a vicious cycle of withholding and holding out, which often points to an underlying insecurity about who we are and what we have. When we don't feel like we are enough, we look to others to define us or our actions. Well, how do we stop that cycle? Well, even though being generous when we are jealous feels like the last thing we would want to do, it turns out it's often one of the ways to move us out of jealousy. When we're jealous, we need to remember that our experience doesn't sit on a balance scale with everyone else's. When we're jealous, we need to remember that a candle, well, maybe not today, but a candle can light all sorts of other candles without losing any of its own light. It's like a lot of things that grow when we give them away. Those important things like friendship, like joy, like laughter, like peace, like love. You get the idea. Again, I'm not suggesting it's always bad to look to others for guidance. We count on people learning from one another what is acceptable, what's appropriate, to create group norms, they say. So we know then to be quiet in the theater. We find out what others are wearing so that we're wearing something appropriate to the gym or to work or to the funeral. I think about the number of conversations I've been in where people are trying to figure out what they should do by comparing to what other people are doing. How much money are you giving as the wedding gift? What are the roads like out there? Are you going to drive in this weather? Are you registering your child for that activity? What time do you start snowblowers in your neighborhood? What time are you going to the party? It's not a bad thing. But remember that Jesus doesn't ask us to do whatever everyone else does. It was the Friday morning Bible study group who noticed that the portion of John's Gospel that we read this morning has an interesting take on comparison. In John's Gospel, there's often mention of a disciple who doesn't have a name, just the disciple whom Jesus loved. And there are a whole lot of theories about who that might have been and why they're included. But I don't think that this story is about that disciple, but rather Peter's desire to compare. So as Jesus is inviting the disciples to go and continue the ministry he began, Peter says, "What about him?" And Jesus says, "Why does it matter? Why does it matter what I'm asking him to do? I'm talking to you right now about what I want you to do." But Peter is like so many of us when we are asked to do something. Who else is doing it? Am I the only one? Why doesn't everyone else have to do it? I'm not doing it unless they're doing it. Whether it's an issue of self-confidence for Peter, we don't know. I wonder if he was feeling insecure about his relationship with Jesus, given the fact that this is the first time he's seen his friend since he betrayed his loyalty in the courtyard as Jesus was arrested. Oops. There might have been some insecurity there. It can happen to all of us. When we feel insecure, we can move to comparisons to help ourselves feel better. We're tempted to blame or try to make ourselves feel superior. But we know from experience that's not healthy in relationships. And Jesus reminds Peter that their relationship is just that, theirs. Their relationship is not defined by Jesus' relationship to anyone else. Peter's value is not tied up in anything that anyone else does. I think only when we remember that apples and oranges are completely different fruits but equally delicious, that God created a diverse, beautiful creation, that God loves each of us for exactly who we are, then maybe we can let go of the shackles of comparison and simply measure ourselves against God's vision for us. I would hope that that is what we would want for one another. I believe it is what God would want for us. So, today, as we offer whatever gifts we have to share, let us place no judgment on the gifts we bring or how we bring them. Let us offer who we are, however we are able, without comparison, as the choir reminds us how much indeed we are loved. Thanks be to God.